Multiple voices may have put a delay on a big plan here in the States. Welcome into my State of Mind. I am Dan York. Tonight, Mike Stenhouse rejoins us. He's been a visitor in the past on a handful of occasions. He runs the Center for Freedom and Prosperity for Rhode Island. He's been one of the lead voices against Roadmap RI, which at the beginning of its, at the beginning felt like it was kind of a very benign plan to see what everybody thinks about Rhode Island and do a little economic development and try to bring some consistency to strategy. And it's turned out to be, well, at least a lot of people watching it now, something very different. And we'll talk to Mike about that. There was a big meeting scheduled for tomorrow where the initial phase of the plan would have been approved by state planners, but that's been pushed back, I'm told. Mike will have details on that for us. And so we shall commence with that conversation after we touch on a couple of the issues going on in the nation, the world, in our own backyard. Yep, that's going to be a biggie when the president digs in that way. He'll have another issue to debate with Congress, and I think he'll be on the losing side of this one in January. We'll talk about that. I don't know why we've become so nonchalant about this number, certainly versus things like Ebola. What else here? Pawtucket loses, over pit bulls. And I think the state loses. We've got to do more than just say, hey, the state's law is better than the city's law. That question just is all you need. Have you seen the weather forecast and what they're dealing with up there? And of course, we check in with you and what you think on your state of mind. So let's dig in a little bit for a Wednesday hump day, almost toward the weekend on that side of the weekday. Yes. Tomorrow night, he's going to look for some national TV time. Here's the headline. CBS has got a little bit of a follow-up on that.
President Obama is considering what critics call an amnesty plan for some 5 million illegal immigrants in the country through the use of an executive order. Republicans, angered that the president would bypass Congress, are considering blocking a continuing resolution aimed at keeping the government running beyond December 11th when current operating funds run out.
Even with a common sense piece of legislation that has bipartisan support, Republicans have been vociferously critical of that bill.
It's really not an amnesty executive order. It has the effect of that and feels like that because it will formally put into a protective mode deportation for some 4 or 5 million illegal aliens, undocumented citizens, say it the way you want to, who walk very softly thinking they're about ready to be bussed out of here. First of all, as I told you the other night, if we don't get to some kind of reconciliation that no one's going to be bussed out of here, we are never going to fix this problem between the White House and Congress. Ever, ever, ever. No one's getting bussed out of here. But we got to put some real definitive protocols in to make sure that folks who are here illegally pay for their stay and find a way to stay. And of course, we need security. What the president is doing here is just kind of not executing current law rather than writing new law. There will be constitutional arguments back and forth, but again, it's that question of whether or not the country settles into the idea that there aren't a bunch of yellow buses that are going to take these people out. Anyway, tomorrow night, the president will speak, and obviously we'll react to it on Friday and beyond. This is going to be a buzzsaw of a debate and an argument and could get down to some kind of Republican reaction that feigns a government shutdown, which is a script we've seen too many times. The next thing that they're going to be battling over is the Keystone Project. It was rejected by the Senate yesterday, didn't get the necessary because it's a financial item. The 60 votes necessary. Here's another little ditty on that.
After 6 years of debate and delay, the Senate rejected a bill to authorize the Keystone XL pipeline.
The 60-vote threshold having not been achieved, the bill is not passed.
Democrats blocked final passage, even though one of their own pushed for the vote. The pipeline is popular in Louisiana, where Senator Mary Landrieu is in a runoff election to keep her seat.
This is for Americans, for American jobs, to build an American middle class.
Many of her colleagues oppose the pipeline, calling it a threat to the environment.
And that's why I call it the Keystone extra-lethal pipeline.
Republicans have vowed to bring the bill up for a vote again when the new Congress convenes next year.
And they'll get it passed, there's no doubt, because there are plenty of Democrats who are wondering why the president is being so proactive against jobs. It's a jobs versus environment conversation. The real victim here is Mary Landrieu from Louisiana, who is about to get walloped in a runoff election because she couldn't deliver the goods on this one. Not just because of that, but this is part of it. And we'll get a veto, and then that battle will ensue. This is going to be a heck of a winter in Washington. Next item is this number. I'm just blown away about the casualness the state has over this number. State death toll from accidental overdoses swells to 188. This is so far above last year's pace. This is the opioids, the OxyContin and Vicodin type of accidental overdoses. And, while, you've got the Narcan and the things that can help from a crisis point of view and an emergency point of view, we have too many people out there that don't have access, and we have too many people who are just playing with fire. I find it incredible. I'm not suggesting that everyone's asleep at the switch, because we have so many advocates that we've had on this show about this issue, speak passionately about it. But, we were wondering about and worrying about and almost freaking out about a case or two of Ebola showing up here. There's 188 people this year alone in Rhode Island that have croaked because they took too much dope or something similar to it. And we kind of go, yeah, that's too bad. Well, say a prayer. Next one. Pawtucket loses. Yeah, state law supersedes Pawtucket law, I guess. Here's your headline. The ban is lifted in Pawtucket. Why? Because a Superior Court judge yesterday said, you know what, the state law written in 2013 supersedes the city law written in 2004, which banned pit bulls. The state law says you cannot ban a single breed. And one of the gentlemen that was a litigant in this case against the city of Pawtucket was here on this show. Perfect gentleman, really nice guy, a very docile pit bull. He talked to newsmakers, I should say Eyewitness News, about it yesterday.
I know a lot of people, not a lot, but some people aren't going to be happy with the ruling. I just wish those folks would take the time to educate themselves and maybe get a better understanding of the breed.
Look, I've had a lot of radio discussion on this. Dan York, weekdays noon to 3 on WPRO. That's AM 630, 99.7 FM if you're scoring at home. And I get all those folks who love the pit bulls who say it's about the ownership, it's about the environment, it's not necessarily about the breed, And there's arguments against that argument too. But now that Pawtucket is lost, they may appeal, they may not win. I don't know what the state Supreme Court would do, but there are two issues here. That state law can just bang supersede already written city law seems to me to be a little bit of invasion of a city's rights to create a quality of life. That argument aside, it seems to me that now we got to put something together here that will hold accountable the owners of pit bulls that are dangerous, or any breed now, since we're non-breeding here, any breed that is dangerous. And I don't see any of that legislation coming through here. A little bit of a fine when someone's leg has been bitten off or close is not exactly equitable under the law, right? Let's go to Buffalo. I'll never forget, I went on a job interview out of college to a radio station in Buffalo, and I was all excited. And when I got there, I got out of the plane, I thought, wow, they really do get a lot of snow. And I walked down this sidewalk, and then an entrance to the building where this very, very, very popular radio station existed. And up the walls, like 12 feet high, were the snowbanks. And I said to myself, you can't do well in this interview. So I bagged it. I didn't do well in that interview. Who wants to work and live there? I'll never forget that. Look at this place. Now, I've had friends from Buffalo. I went to school in Ohio with kids from Buffalo. They're pretty tough, and they laugh about the weather. Even this storm, they're not laughing about. They could get as much as 6 feet before it starts to warm up again. Yeah, there's the headline. And then they got a flooding issue. Now, all of America, I guess, is freezing right now, according to tweets that we find from weather people and all that kind of stuff. But wow, God bless them in Buffalo. I don't know how they do it. Your state of mind is important to us. You can tweet at us. You can Facebook post. You can send us an email. You can call us and leave a voicemail. What do we have in the grab bag tonight? Somebody by the name of Walsh with no first name, or maybe Walsh is the first name. It's a disgrace that a pro-choice Catholic in a Catholic state has been elected to be our leader. That would be a reference to none other than Governor-elect Gina Raimondo. Let me remind you that while we are so pro-Catholic, now number 2, I think, in America next to Massachusetts, we are also pollable very pro-choice, which is a conflict in your Catholicism. Unless and until you push the envelope and the conscience starts to get bothered, and then all of a sudden people get very comfortable about being pro-choice. And I think Gina Raimondo suffered from that in this election bid, only earning 41%. Maybe she learned that lesson. But it's not necessarily a big pro-life place. Hate to burst your bubble. All right, there's progress, I guess, against Roadmap RI. We'll tell you about it when we come back. You know, in some ways, I think the media, including me, have been asleep at the switch on this Roadmap RI thing. I can say that I've done a full show on it. And I can say that after it was done, I still didn't know what I was talking about. Here's the headline. Yes, it's an economic plan. At least it was sold to us that way. And it's been met with some significant protest as we get toward a deadline here. And let me just remind you of what they say it is. Oh, here's Mike Stenhouse. Bang, there you are. Hello, Mike.
Hey,
nice
Dan.
to have you. From the Center from Rhode Island, the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity. We have an update on this. What was supposed to be an interval tomorrow morning, or a final decision or a meeting by planners to formalize a stage of green light for this Roadmap RI, has been postponed.
Yeah, apparently Speaker Mattiello stepped in, and we give him great credit for that, saying, wait a minute, I'm hearing too much opposition to this. We need to look at it. We shouldn't adopt this tomorrow. I'm calling for a timeout. Let's regroup. Let's look at it. And apparently the meeting's been pushed off for about 4 weeks until about December 11th. So the fight isn't over yet, but all we've been calling for is more debate on this topic. So
No,
our
that's not all
views-
you've been calling for.
Well,
You don't like the plan.
But as an interim step,
Yes.
to prove it, we need debate. You just don't take our word for it.
Well, here's, you know, I had 2 of the planners on, when was this, Jess? When was this? Last November, when we first were talking about this Roadmap RI, and I asked them, what is this thing? Roadmap RI is what?
Roadmap RI is really a unique public-private partnership where we're really trying to work and figure out what is the best future for the state of Rhode Island, and more importantly, how we get there.
Okay, seemed pretty benign to me at the time, and although I was trying to drive the big question, you know, because this is something I've been trying to drive for a long time. The big question, the big answer, the big strategy, the big idea. What is it this thing is going to eventually bring us? I didn't really get that answer. You think this has been kind of a switch pitch, yes?
Yeah, this is a Trojan horse, not unlike 38 Studios was, not unlike Obamacare was at a national level. They're trying to tell you all these nice things that it is, but when you look under the cover, and we do the research, we're a research organization, and we look at how similar plans have been rolled out in other states and the negative impact that has happened across the country, then you realize that all this nice sounding stuff on the front that is very vague, there's a reason you couldn't put your finger on it, because there's no specifics.
I'm not sure why you link it to 38 Studios. The 38 Studios was a stealth vote. So 38 Studios, in my mind, had potential criminal activity. 38 Studios was a process problem where the legislators were duped. The business plan itself failed. It could have succeeded. This is a whole different situation. This is something that we say is X and may end up being Y.
Yeah, and the bait and switch was this was supposed to be an economic development plan, which is fine. The state should have a good economic development plan. What happened was, along the way, the plan got hijacked by what we would call radical social equity advocates. and it turned into nothing but a social equity plan. There's no economics in it. In an economic plan, you would see cost-benefit analysis, required investment, what we should do about our tax climate.
So we should be
none
clear
of
with
that.
this.
Right.
An economic development plan is, hey, we're going to start this industry. Hey, we have a jobs plan, and this is the model. Hey, we're going to create a corridor where we are biotech. Hey, okay.
And here are the steps we're going to take to get there.
Social equity is described by you as what?
Well, it's basically, the theory, as we best can describe it, is if we create socially equitable, in terms of race, income, and affordable housing units available, if we create these socially equitable neighborhoods, that will somehow lead to increased economic activity. If you read the plan, that's all that's in it. Goals like that. Well, we need to have more jobs, we need to have better education, and we need to do that by having socially equitable populations, and it's voodoo economics.
Okay. You want to be in the middle of arguing that. The Rhode Island Public Expenditure Council has said let's pause because it's becoming more of that than economics.
Right.
The House Speaker has said let's hold on. I wonder what the governor-elect is going to do about this. Has she weighed in?
No, we've actually put out some mild calls. We do have reason to believe that she is supportive of this idea. Now the question is, does she know what's under the cover? One of her economic advisors, a guy named Bruce Katz out of the Brookings Institute, is a national supporter of this type of sustainable development. So we have reason to believe the governor-elect is supportive of this, but I'll tell you what, if anything we've proved by delaying this meeting tomorrow, that this is a hot political topic, and I don't know that Governor Raimondo would want to take on this hot potato first step out of the box.
All right, when we come back, what's wrong with social equity? Is he just being mean-spirited?
Because of its racist policies in terms of blocking. Let me finish, ma'am.
Every time you call us a racist, I'm going to interrupt you, because we're not supposed to be calling names.
Could you please silence her?
Please, he's not calling you a racist. He's
Black and Hispanic people.
So that was the tone of one of the recent public hearings on this Roadmap RI process. And what happens, I think, when we get into these conversations about neighborhood and fairness and social equity and all that, is that things get hot. There is a prescription in the protocols for having public discussion to use the word racism, to talk about that kind of thing. And I'm not afraid of those words. Are you?
No, it's a legitimate concern of a lot of people.
Sure. So the problem is that when somebody says, hey, I think the formula for shoving federal money and mandates down a local town's throat needs to be discussed, all of a sudden those who are heck bent on making that happen start to point fingers, and it becomes very uncomfortable and requires very, very strong leadership to moderate through these things. But what is wrong with the idea that there ought to be a small quotient of population of every kind in every community? Devil's advocate question. I mean, right now we have a law, but not a funding mandate for that as it exists.
Yeah.
Right?
A couple things first. If we want to have a social equity agenda, we should have a social equity agenda.
And call it what it is.
And call it what it is.
Debate it openly.
But let's not throw a few economic phrases in there and say that it's an economic development
now that's
plan.
a fair point.
Okay.
There really is.
All right. Rhode Island's growth economy should be available to everybody, of every persuasion. They call them marginalized populations, as I guess the term now. Nobody should be excluded. We agree with that. But for HUD in Washington, D.C., the Department of Housing and Urban Development, to mandate their preferred mix of what kind of racial income population should be in your town is way beyond the pale. I mean, you had an earlier issue about Pawtucket versus the state. This is Washington, D.C. telling our cities and towns what kind of racial mixes we need to have.
And Rhode Island
and that should be a local decision only.
Rhode Island's been kind of an incubator in this. Is that for HUD? For
not
this
exactly.
specific kind of plan?
Not exactly. The HUD has been pushing these programs through. In fact, I have a document that shows Rhode Island is just one of 16 of the newest around the country. Cities and counties in the past have been incubators. Rhode Island will become, though, the first statewide entity to adopt these HUD principles as its economic development plan. And again, like we say, we think it's voodoo economics.
All right, now for those of you who've been watching this show and listening to the radio and have been lashing out saying that it's a one-sided argument and all the mean-spirited guys are represented on the show, if you have a strong feeling about this, let us know. Call me at 228-1886. You know the number, the State of Mind number. Email me at Dan at State of Mind or whatever. What's our email address? Well, you can find us. And come here. We invited the Roadmap RI people here, but they said they were too busy in the planning stage for tomorrow's meeting. Maybe they'll come here soon to refocus this, and you'd like to have a nice little conversation with them as well. I'd like to have fair and balanced, to steal a Fox term here, conversation about it, but I think even fair and balanced folks have taken a good hard look at this and say, whoa, this thing quietly morphed, right? What's the moral of the story so far?
The moral of the story is this is not the economic development plan that the legislature called for years in 2013 legislation. This is not an economic development plan. That's just the bottom line.
And I think it's probably fair to say if you want to have a social fairness conversation, have it.
Right.
Tell us what it is.
Right.
All right, keep us up to date on this, will you,
Sure
Mike?
thing,
Good
Dan.
work.
Thank you.
All right, one more thing next. What's going to be interesting is whether Governor-elect Gina Raimondo engages this conversation on Roadmap RI before she becomes governor. The timing to push back an important interval meeting on this to mid-December indicates the House Speaker gets the problem, but does the governor-elect want to come in early and lead? Inevitably, she's going to have to lead on this right after she gets inaugurated, and that's going to be very, very interesting. And again, if you've got a different point of view on Roadmap RI, come. You've got a seat here. We'll see you on the radio tomorrow at noon until 3 on WPRO and back here tomorrow night at 7:30.